Welcome back to the kitchen, guys and girls. This is your boy Mark, the Mad Chef, and tonight we are doing a brand new segment on the channel called Dessert Challenges. Like I promised you guys earlier in several videos, we are going to be doing more things this year, going into new territories, and desserts being one of them. Not only is this channel about cooking and entertainment, it's about my personal growth as a home cook, and my kryptonite in the kitchen is desserts. I can cook savory foods all day long, but I'm not much of a baker or a dessert creator. So this is something that I'm challenging myself to do. I'm going to be trying to do a lot of my favorite desserts and hopefully some of yours. So if there are any dessert items that you would like to see come to the channel, please, as always, comment them below and I will see what I can do. Tonight, we're going to be doing, honestly, the only dessert that I've ever made that has been a hit with anyone that has not directly gone into the trash can after making it. And these are my Boston cream donuts. So we're going to be doing everything from the filling, the ganache, and the dough from scratch. So before we dive into doing anything with the donuts, as far as making the donuts, we need to go ahead and get our cream ready. And this is a source of controversy for a lot of folks, but Boston cream donuts has a vanilla custard in it. If you come to my house with Boston cream donuts that have a center that looks like Elmer's glue or Pillsbury buttercream in the center, you're automatically uninvited. Fight me. I don't care. That being said, we're going to be making a vanilla custard, so without further ado, let's get cooking. So the whole concept of the Boston cream donut is to make a Boston cream pie, which is actually a cake if you think about it. As weird as it is, I don't argue with it because I'm too busy eating it. And in the center of your Boston cream pie, you'll notice that it has a yellow pastry cream center. So that is what technically is supposed to go into your Boston cream donuts. Not some sort of, there's a popular viral hack where you put pastry cream in, and guys, don't do that. It takes about the same amount of time to make the actual authentic cream, so that's what we're going to do. So to a medium sauce pot, we are going to add 1 cup of milk. Preference, honestly, is up to you. Some people swear by whole milk. I've got 2%. I have made it with 2% each time that I've made this, and it has turned out just fine. All right, and to this, we're going to be adding a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch as a thickening agent. Want to get that in there. And now we are going to start mixing this thing together over a medium heat. But before we get this heated up some, we're going to mix all these ingredients until they're nice and smooth. No lumps. If you don't get the lumps out now, by the time you put this milk base on the heat, you're not going to get them out. Alright, so everything is smooth. No lumps, no chunks, no white powders anywhere. Alright, so over medium heat, we're going to bring this to a boil, stirring constantly. This has to be thick. So it's been about 6 minutes and it has reached a boil. So now we're going to turn the heat down and we're going to let this simmer for an additional minute whilst stirring constantly. The reason why we are cooking over a medium heat is because we do not want this milk to either curdle or scald, or now that it has been thickening, we do not want this to stick to the bottom of our sauce pot because that would be a total catastrophe. If your custard base starts getting a little too hot, you can always pull your pot off the heat. We do not want to ruin this, and that is a very easy thing to do. Alright, so now we've got our custard base off the heat. We've got 2 egg yolks, just the yolks. And now we're going to start tempering them by slowly adding our custard base to this. Just little bits at a time, and we are going to violently whisk these eggs. That reason for that being is we do not want to create a confectionery scrambled egg breakfast in this bowl here. And this is going to keep the eggs from cracking, breaking up, and scrambling inside of our custard. I would not exceed half of this milk mixture. We just want this to reach a very creamy consistency. Alright, now that we have tempered our egg yolks, we're going to add them into our custard base. Make sure everything is well combined off the heat. All right. Now we're going to bring this back up to a boil, which shouldn't take very long. And we are back at a boil. And now we are going to let this simmer for 2 minutes, stirring aggressively until our desired thickness has been reached. Notice how I'm constantly backing it off the heat, because even now this is going to be very easy to ruin. Always check for consistency, and that is still a bit too thin. Not quite there yet, so we're going to keep beating this until we get a nice, thick custard. It may take longer for some, more than others. I'm being a little cautious because this pot does like to retain a good bit of heat, so I want to back this heat off just a little bit more. Alright, and that looks to be about right. So now all we're going to do, and you always add this last once the temperature, once the pot is off the heat, you're going in with 1 tablespoon of unsalted butter and a whole teaspoon of vanilla. And we are just going to go ahead and stir that in off the heat until everything is nice, smooth, and that butter is dissolved. Now don't worry if after a few minutes, if your custard is still a bit loose, it's going to be that way while it's hot. This is going to set. And now that we're done with this, we're going to clean up the stove area, and then we're going to move on to the dough once this cools down a little bit. I'm actually going to go ahead and transfer it into another bowl. This is going to need to chill for about 2 to 4 hours. You can make this up overnight, but by the time our donuts are done cooking and they're cooling on the rack, this will be cold enough to pipe with. Okay, now that we've got our proper Boston cream filling in the fridge chilling and setting, we're going to work on our donut batter. Hence why I still have this shirt on, because anytime I work with flour and or dough, it looks like I am very unsuccessfully trying to smuggle cocaine into America. So there's no point in dressing nice for any of these videos. Say what you will, this shirt's staying on. Alright, so what I've got in this bowl is 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and then we're going to add right to it 1 package, which equals 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry or rapid rise yeast. And we're also going to add in 1/3 of a cup of regular granulated sugar and 1 teaspoon of your finest sea salt, or regular table salt will work just fine. And we're going to add that right in. Alright, now we're going to start mixing this up. Before we add any of our wet ingredients to this mix, we want to make sure that all the yeast and the flour is well acquainted and mixed in properly. That way everything gets hydrated as it is supposed to. Now I have seen alternative methods where you bloom your yeast into warm milk. I've done it that way before too. The last time I did that, however, my dough was not super cooperative, so I'm just going to stick to the OG recipe. Alright, now that everything is combined and looking pretty darn good, we are going to be adding to this, before I do that, 2 whole eggs and 6 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. Reason for that being is most times when you go to make stuff like this, the eggs are coming straight out of the fridge. These are room temp, which is preferable, but honestly melted butter and warm milk make this thing work so much better. And this is 2/3 of a cup of 2% milk. You can use whole milk, you can use skim, you can use whatever makes you happy, really. And I've got this. You don't want your milk to exceed about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. If you do not have a probe thermometer or a meat thermometer or something like that, then make sure that it is warm. Between the warm and hot, you know, when you stick your finger in it, it's not going to burn off all of your fingerprints unless you want to commit crimes, then do so. Now we're going to incorporate all of this in. This is going to look genuinely like trash to begin with, but it will come together, I promise you. Also, half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. All right. Now we're just going to keep mixing this until it starts to form like a shaggy form of a dough ball. Now I notice you guys are seeing this other bowl right next to me, and that is another 1.25 cups of all-purpose flour. There is a story behind this, yes. The reason why I did not add all the flour in at once is, one, that's not the way the OG recipe went. And then two, the last time I made Boston cream donuts, I had to throw the batter away because the dough was too tacky, too sticky, and I had not made them in a very long time, so I did not think of adding extra flour to the mix, and I ended up having to throw everything away. This mixture is supposed to be very, very sticky. It's going to be a very sticky batter. There's a lot of sugar in it. There's eggs and butter. There's no way this is not going to be tacky. But it should not be unworkable. You've got to make this batter governable. Okay, this is where I messed up last time. So, you see this? How kind of goopy it looks? That's actually the way it's supposed to look. Now that being said, I had it looking like that the entirety of the time I had the whole 3 1/3 cups of flour in. So now we're going to go ahead in very small doses, because this is easy to dry out. We're going to add in our remaining flour. Now, even when this starts to come together and form a cohesive ball, it should still be sticky. But when you start working it, you should be able to work it without having like all the batter glued to your hands and pull everything out of it while you're working with it. Alright, so once we reach a shaggy dough mass like this, we need to stop adding the flour, but don't discard your remaining flour. We're going to lightly flour our work surface, which I'm about to bring out, and then we're going to start kneading it very gently. Alright, so I'm just bringing out a standard cutting board, and I want to not only dust this cutting board, but I want to dust my hands to make sure nothing sticks excessively. And now we're just going to plop this sucker right out onto the floured surface. Now, all we're going to do is start to work this dough very gently until it forms a nice, smooth, yet slightly sticky dough. You do not want to take the stick out of this, she said. We're not trying to do this for any specific allotted amount of time, because we're not trying to build a gluten structure. Unlike when we make pizza dough, we're just trying to get this to become one cohesive ball of dough. Alright, and we're almost there. It comes together very quickly. Alright, now we're ready to take it to our next step. So what we're going to do now, see what I'm talking about being able to put your hand on it, still be sticky and not pull anything up. That's where you need to be at this point. But do not, and I repeat, do not throw away your excess flour. We are still going to need it later. So all we're going to do now is transfer this into a bowl. We're just going to lube this up with a little bit of butter, because the lube is important, am I right, guys? Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and get all that in there. You could use olive oil, whatever you want. I use butter because honestly I get better results out of that when it comes to donuts. It does the job that oil does with providing a little bit of extra flavor. I'm going to flour my hands again, pull up our dough ball, and we're going to put this down on the butter. And I am going to let this sit covered with a towel on top for about 1 hour, and I'll see you again then. It has been 1 hour and we are ready to move on to our next step. So I've got another station set up. I want to very lightly flour this surface. I'm going to flour my hands, and we're going to take a look at this dough, which has about doubled in size. So we're going to go ahead and get this out of here. And again, it's still sticky without being unworkable. So now we're going to roll this out into a rectangle that is probably a 1/4 inch thick. We're going to go ahead and pick out a 3-inch biscuit or cookie cutter. And because this is sticky, we're going to go ahead and get that all kind of pre-done with flour and try to make even donut shapes. These right here are going to be the best looking donuts you're going to get out of the batch. I mean, of course, we're obviously going to repurpose our scraps. But once you repurpose your scraps, your donuts will not come out looking nearly as good as this. And that's what you should be left with. Alright? And I've got a lightly floured surface here. It's just a baking sheet. I'm going to go ahead and get our finished donuts on this baking sheet and space them out. We're going to re-roll this and recut it. Alright, and honestly, the leftovers made some pretty good looking donuts. We will flatten some of these out before they go into the fryer. So all that's left to do is give this its final proof. I'm just going to cover it with another damp rag, and I will see you again in an hour. And about 30 minutes through, I'm going to start preheating my oil. My deep fryer unceremoniously died on me in the middle of cooking one night, so I am down to using a pot. So I do have to very carefully watch the temperature of that pot, and it does take a while for it to get warm. Target temperature for frying is going to be 350, so I will see you again in an hour. We'll be getting ready to fry them then. Alright guys, and that took actually an additional 11 minutes to get the oil about where it needed to be, so please be sure to factor that in. Also, it is imperative to note that I am heating this oil over a medium heat, and that's because that gives you a greater control over your temperature. Please do not crank your burners on full blast. The oil will get too hot and bad things can happen. So please make sure if you're doing this, you use a fry or a candy thermometer to do this. Alright, so we're going to add in our very first donut. And we're going to do this 2 at a time. And we're going to cook these both for about a minute. And then after a minute, we're going to take a look at the bottom side of these. If they're a nice, deep golden brown, then we can go ahead and flip them. But please do not cook them for any longer than about a minute and a half on each side. These guys have been in for about a minute, and they are looking perfect. So I'm going to flip them over and do the same thing, cook them for another minute, and check. Now that can go back down for a little bit. And we're going to repeat this process for all of our donuts. Alright, and that didn't take very long at all to cook these guys up, and would you look at that? That dough provided us 12 very sexy donuts. And you might be asking where my wire rack is. That's a good question. I asked that myself. I don't know if you guys have this problem, but there's times where my stuff and everyone else's stuff grows legs and kind of disappears into the ether. So, while these guys are cooling down for the next 15 minutes, we have got to make our chocolate topping. Alright, so all we're going to do is warm a 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream. We're not getting it to a boiling point or anything like that. We're just trying to steam the milk a little bit. So once you start seeing some vapors start to rise up off our 1/2 and 1/2, it's time to pull it. Alright, so we let this steam for about a minute. Time to pull it off. And so what I have here is a 1/2 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips. You don't want anything that's too sweet because you already got a lot of rich sweetness going on both in the donut and in the filling. I've seen people use like dark chocolate, just chopped up dark chocolate. You can do that too, but I like the balance of a semi-sweet. So we're going to go ahead and just slowly add our cream to our chocolate chips. Now you could do this a la microwave, but I decided to do it this way. Alright. My good whisk is in the dishwasher because I do believe I have used every dish in the house twice to make this, but As far as, but right now I have no regrets. And there is our beautiful chocolate ganache. Alright, now all we gotta do is wait for these donuts to cool down just a little bit more and we can move to our next step. Alright, I know what you guys might be saying. Mark, this ain't a baker's dozen. There's supposed to be 13. Well, I ain't a baker, but this is a dozen. A literal dozen. So what we're going to do now is take our nicely cooled donuts, give them a nice dunkaroo. See how that thickened up? Alright. We're going to repeat this for all of our beautiful donuts. Alright, isn't that beautiful? Alright, so if you have extra ganache like I do, it doesn't hurt. Just go ahead and start filling around some of these donuts that may have some gaps in their coverage. Because you want a nice thick layer of this beautiful ganache. And what we're going to do now is let this harden, and then we're going to get to my least favorite part, which is stuffing it. Alright, so now you could have totally pre-filled these before you put them in the ganache. That's like the last thing. This is like the last thing I do. You can do it either way. So what you're going to do, now that it's not runny and dripping everywhere, you're going to take a paring knife or a small knife, and you're going to insert it about halfway, and then you're going to do it middle way so that there's a little cross. So you're going to do this for all your donuts. Alright, so what this is a pre-tipped piping bag. You can get these at Walmart. They're not real expensive. I think it's like 5 or 10 for like $3 or $5. I am terrible at piping, and I am terrible with picking tips and stuff like that. So this is the easiest way I can do this. So all you're going to do is find your mortally wounded donuts and then fill your donuts. Don't be cheap. As so. And then we're going to do this for the rest. And would you look at these guys? Absolutely beautiful, cream-packed Boston cream donuts. Alright, so there's only one thing left to do at this point, and that is to try one. Cheers. That feeling though. Alright guys, again, you don't have to go to the donut shop to get these donuts. You don't have to set up a prepackaged donuts with loads of preservatives in them. You can make them at home if you have a couple hours and just some basic cooking skills. This is the beginning of a brand new series for me. I hope you enjoy it. And guys, if you have any ideas for me, I'm down to learn anything. Nothing is off the table at this point. So please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.